What's up, my fellow artistes? All right, now, in this video, we're focusing on form. Now, form is one of the 7 principles of art and design. I've always been a firm believer that, if you can understand a subject by its principles, that will really help you not only in your comprehension, but of actual application and your eventual mastery of that subject. So, you've heard me say it in other videos, form isn't necessarily hard to comprehend, but it tends to be really difficult in your application on paper. And so hopefully this lesson will show you guys the hack that I've developed and that I know works for me, and maybe it'll work for you too. So having said that, let's get this class started. Woo. All right, so now understanding form in drawing. So before we can touch on form, we need to understand what comes before form, and that is shape. Shape is defined, of course, by the outer contour of an object. And this is how your viewer will first perceive it and begin to really make sense of your drawing. Now, it's important to understand that light, value, you've heard me say that a couple times, and shadow, all of which can be achieved by the buildup and successful layering of your tones, will help to give an object that sense of form and context in space so that your viewer can fully comprehend and identify your drawing. Now, it's important to note that the fundamental difference of form is that it is 3-dimensional, whereas shape is only ever going to be 2-dimensional. Now, in drawing, form is implied. And the reason why it's implied is because it's an illusion of that 3rd dimension. As opposed to, say, sculptures, right? When it comes to sculptures, the form is very much real. And the reason why is because it physically takes up that 3rd dimension in space. But with drawings, it's not like that. It's up to you to sell the illusion of that 3rd dimension. So that leaves us with, how do we convey 3 dimensions in 2-dimensional space? Well, I use a technique that I have dubbed framing my form in my drawings. So in order to achieve a 3-dimensional appearance, we must use form lines in our preliminary outline. And this will help us frame the what I call invisible inner contours of our subject. Now, it's important to note, yes, we do already have our basic shape, which is the outside contour, but the form lines are meant to help us frame the inner contours of our subject. And this will allow us to go from a 2-dimensional framework to a 3-dimensional framework. Now let me show you guys what this looks like on paper. Okay, so here I have taken a photo of my hand, and we're going to start outlining the basic shape of my hand. Now this approach that I'm using is the organic approach as opposed to the geometric approach. One of the things that you'll find as you draw more and more, let's say if you're uncomfortable with just busting out an organic outline like I'm doing here, and you want to use the geometric approach to help solidify your outline and the basic shape of your subject, you can do that. You'll find that as you draw more and more, you'll become more and more comfortable, your muscle memory will develop, in your drawing hand, and you'll be able to bust out basic shapes using the organic approach more often than not. But here what I'm doing is I'm just ironing out this is what I call the basic outline. And of course, the basic outline, as you see here, is two-dimensional. There is no third dimension, but we are going to be implying, if you will, that third dimension through the use of our form lines. Here, I'm just gonna erase some of these. Just iron out the nail here. There we are. Okay, so this is the basic shape, but now I'm going to look at the reference image and I'm going to very lightly start to frame that three-dimensional form that we see in the reference image. And as you can see, the flow of that third dimension in this image does change from the fingers. It's a much more tight framework. And then here on the thumb, as you can see, there's a high point as we go back closer towards the main body of the hand, and then it gets smaller. And with practice, you'll start to be able to identify those high and low points in the form of your subject. But the whole point of this approach is to help you as the artist get a better comprehension of the underlying form in your drawing, so that when you go to lay down your charcoal, you'll be able to know exactly how to pull that charcoal across the paper. So here I'm going to show you. We'll take some soft charcoal here, do a nice little tone check, and then using these form lines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my charcoal along the bottom, just like this here, and then I'm going to follow that contour that I've just laid down with my form lines. And what this is doing is this is already helping me as the artist convey that illusion that we were talking about in the lesson of that third dimension, of that three-dimensional appearance. This is how I draw all of my charcoal pieces. I always use form lines, and I always frame my outlines after I lay down that basic shape. So I hope this helped, and good luck in your future drawings.